All right, man. So we got some absolutely huge news coming out of Fox News polls. So we have some big polls coming out here for Fox News releasing Sunbelt polls, Sunbelt plus NC. So what we know is because of the general polling that has occurred with Kamala Harris, she's opened up a second pathway to victory. So because there were so many double haters for Biden, there was actually only the Rust Belt that was a possibility for Biden. But what Harris has now done is she's actually also opened up a second pathway. So the second pathway is entirely independent, 100% independent of the Rust Belt. And so what that means is you could lose every single Rust Belt state, but you could also still win the election. And that's in the states, the Sun Belt states plus North Carolina. So we have this new Fox News poll. They're an A-rated pollster, so registered voters 826. This is post-DNC as well as RFK dropping out. So there's a potential for a DNC boost in here. So you have Arizona, Harris +1, which is huge. He's already at +1. Georgia, Harris +2, which is also massive. A +2 lead in Georgia is absolutely huge. And then Nevada, also Harris +2. This is less powerful. And then North Carolina, you have Trump +1. So what I'm trying to look at when I'm doing these forecasts for these polls, I'm trying to look at is, or for what's going to happen, I want to look at polls, but I also want to think of fundamentals. The fundamentals being demographic changes, who's strong with the demographics. So, in a state like Georgia, there's still a lot of black people moving into the state who are presumably going to vote for Harris. We saw that video yesterday. If you haven't seen it, make sure to go check it out. But the new voter registration is absolutely spiking through the roof right now. And so with that spike, a lot of the people are going to be missing the polls. Black people, Latinas, etc., young black women, etc. Those are people who are going to be missed, a lot of those first-time voters. So what we want to be able to see here is, we don't want to just look at the polls, right? But these poll numbers are really amazing. So we can see here for the exact margins, we have Georgia, Harris 50, Trump 48, Nevada, Harris 50, Trump 48, Arizona, Harris 50, Trump 49, North Carolina 50, 49. This is also huge because the sums are really close to 100, as you can see here. Like these are 98s, these are 99s, but she's polling at 50%, indicating a large strength, right? And what we know is there's a lot of evidence with overperformance in the Sun Belt dating back to old Joe Biden, right? So what we know is, in my personal opinion, there's this big debate that's raging on now, especially in my community, but there's a question as to whether or not the Sun Belt is more likely to go blue or the Rust Belt. You can let me know your thoughts down below. I'm personally bigger on the Sun Belt because I think the fundamentals are stronger there, because Kamala Harris is doing really strong. The double hater thing, all of that stuff is really strong for Harris in those states as opposed to the Rust Belt. Which I think so. So like the black voters, the young voters, etc. Also the Hispanics in Arizona, for example, are actually more progressive than Hispanics in other states. So we can do is take a look at some of these polls here in these states. So first we'll look at Arizona. So she's actually already in the lead. So she's ticked up to 1.0. So her lead had gone down to 0.8 on the 27th, but she had already been up by 1.4. Now in the aggregate, she's back up to 1 point. And so we can look at these polls here. So with these poll numbers, we have the Fox News polls are Harris +1. Strategies 360 also just dropped the poll as well. I don't know if they have any recent polls. They have 400 registered voters, Harris +1. Also, there are some polls, I'm not saying all of them, but some of the polls actually have Harris performing better than likely voter polls and registered voter polls, which is a pretty big deal. There is this Noble Predictive Insights poll that has +3 and +1, but excuse my language, but they're a shit tier pollster. So Fox News is actually an A-rated pollster. Noble Predictive Insights is actually a C-rated pollster, so they're a lot less reputable of a pollster. So I think we should take the Fox News poll more seriously here. But you can see, it's trending in her direction here. Navigator Research, I think, actually leans blue, which is kind of surprising, but I think with the fundamentals in here and already a 1 point lead, she's definitely, I say Arizona's lean blue, which is actually a pretty, I think, controversial statement. But I think with the fundamentals of how the Hispanics there are more progressive, and then I think it was the Arizona Hispanics where there was a plurality of people, Hispanics, who actually had said that abortion was their most important issue. So it was like, what is the most important issue to you? And the plurality had said, like 23% said it was abortion. So there's probably going to be heavy turnout. Abortion is on the ballot in the state of Arizona. So that's also a big deal. Cornel West, also not on the ballot in Arizona, also a big deal as well. And then also we have the state of Georgia. So she has officially taken the lead in the Georgia polls here. She had a slight, very so slight lead for a very small time on August 15th. So she's been kind of stuck in the numbers. But she has retaken the lead in the state of Georgia. She is now up by 0.2 points. And we can take a look here. The only polls that have her winning actually here, you have these +2s for Harris in the Fox News polls. the focal data numbers, these two +1s in the RV and the adults polls, and the likely voter polls is +4. I did take a look back at the Georgia numbers for 2020. I did take a look to see if I could find one of the Fox News polls. I believe that this is the state that I was able to actually find the previous Fox News poll from 2020. So let's see if we can, come across that poll here. But from what I had seen was the poll actually had ended up being pretty accurate. So here was a Fox News poll back in June. So the Fox News poll had Biden +2, which actually ended up being really, really close. So Georgia ended up only being won by 0.2, so it's off by 1.8. I know you might think like 1.8, that's a pretty big margin of error, but really that's actually not. For the polls to be wrong, it's actually pretty darn good. And then I think there was even another one that we might have missed somewhere here, but that +2 is, really close, and so that ended up being pretty accurate, so it's pretty good stare decisis on that. We can see back in 2020, right, Biden up 1.2, he ends up winning by 0.2. So the polling error, this is another reason why I think the Sun Belt is actually better than the Rust Belt. You don't have to rely on such massive polling errors. The polling errors in the Rust Belt, they range from anywhere from 3.5 on the low end to 7.7 on the high end. In Georgia, the polls are wrong by 1. In Arizona, they were wrong by about 2.2-ish. So nowhere close to the issues of the Rust Belt. North Carolina actually ended up being wrong by about 3-ish points, so it was on the par with like the low end of the Rust Belt errors, just to give you some perspective, as wrong as Pennsylvania. So this is another reason why I think I have Georgia actually lean blue. I don't even have it as a toss-up, honestly. And it could go likely blue depending upon how the numbers go. I feel like, again, looking at sort of the fundamentals, I feel like the fundamentals, again, are really, really strong for Democrats. Now, looking at North Carolina, we can see that she's down 0.4. Her numbers actually went down by 0.1. We can see this year +1. She's actually getting some pretty good numbers recently. So this SoCal poll, SoCal is a red pollster, and it's sponsored by this red pollster here, so it's not super serious to be taken. I think it's a pretty trash tier pollster. Survey USA, having Trump and Harris tied, and then another one in the registered voter poll, she's +1 in the head-to-head, and then tied here. The Navigator Research poll also tied Trump +2. So these polls are really, really looking good. The NYT Siena polls all plus. So definitely big deal. And then North Carolina, we went over sort of the fundamentals here too. We have the governor race where Stein is winning by double digits. So presumably that would aid them. I can't remember if abortion is on the ballot in North Carolina. I forgot. But if that's on there, that would be a big deal. I can't remember if it's on there. And then also with North Carolina, there's a lot of demographic changes happening. So they're adding hundreds of thousands of people into the blue areas of North Carolina. So there's demographic changes that likely will shift it. For North Carolina, you go from about a 4-point deficit, which I think is realistically more so a de facto 5 to 6 point deficit because of Gary Johnson, to only, this is really close actually. So I think people forgot how close this was, only 1.4%. So, about like half of Florida. So super, super close. Again, just looking at the trend lines, there's pretty much no way, in my opinion, that North Carolina doesn't flip blue this time around. With the fundamentals, the way that they're running the campaign on the ground, etc., I just can't really see it being possible. Even for Georgia, Gary Johnson 0.3.1 again, right? So probably muting Trump's victory. But, Trump ends up winning by like 5 points pretty much, or 6 points almost. And it's probably a de facto 7.5 loss because of Gary Johnson. Presuming he margins out like 1.5 plus. And then, Georgia ends up winning. I mean, think about that. 6 point shift in 4 years is just insane. Minimum 6 points. It's just unfathomable. There's no way that Georgia doesn't hold blue. Again, a lot of black people still moving in there from those northern states. So again, there's just no way that it doesn't go blue. When you take into account the poll numbers plus the fundamentals, there's just no way. And then we saw the same thing with Arizona as well. There's just no way. And then Nevada as well is an interesting one. Nevada's kind of been lagging behind the polls. It's actually taken an uptick of 1.3. So I think she's actually hit a new high in Nevada for the lead in the aggregate numbers here in 538's numbers. So she's taking a peak here. We can see that the Fox News polls are +2, Harris +6. So the Strategies 360 poll actually also just dropped. They have her +6 in this poll, which is pretty large. And then Focal Data also having pretty large numbers as well. Redfield and Wilton was +1, and then these NY Times Siena polls are like +213. So Nevada's going to go blue. It's going to go blue. I have it like lean blue right now, and then I might change that forecast to likely blue, depending upon how I look at the numbers as time goes on. But right now, I would say Georgia is, in my personal forecast, I have Georgia as actually lean blue, close to likely blue if she gets a larger lead. Like if she gets to the point where she's leading by 4 points, I'm calling it likely blue. just because she also is going to get underestimated, I think, because she's going to overperform with those people who are getting missed. Black voters, young black women, young Latinas, those kinds of voters are going to get missed. First time voters, we saw that video yesterday. In that video about the CBS stuff where they were talking about how there's this crazy burst in registration of new voters. So Georgia, I have lean blue. Nevada, I have lean blue, close to likely blue. Arizona, I also have lean blue, close to likely blue. And then North Carolina, I also have is lean blue, although it's kind of close to toss up, I feel like. But I would say all of these are lean blue states with the way that the trend lines are going, the fundamentals on the ground, and then also the poll numbers as well. That's kind of the aggregate that I'm trying to do. And then also looking at 2020 poll numbers as well. And so I have a guaranteed margin list. I think if in Arizona, Harris is up 2.5, she's guaranteed victory. Nevada, 3 to 3.5 guaranteed victory. Georgia, 2 to 2.5 guaranteed victory. And then NC, if she's up by 3 to 3.5, she can't lose. Now, I'm not saying she can win. She can't win with less than those margins in the polls. What I'm saying is if she reaches those margins, she's guaranteed to win. So these poll numbers are absolutely huge because Fox News is actually really highly rated. They're A-rated pollster. The other pollsters that are dropping polls, usually pretty shit tier pollsters like C's. So, it's like barely passing a class versus like excelling severely in a class, right? Imagine like getting an A in calculus as opposed to a C. It's a pretty massive difference, right? So really, really huge news. I'm really, really big on the Sun Belt. I'm actually bigger on the Sun Belt due to the fundamentals than the Rust Belt. I know that's pretty unpopular among progressives, maybe because of like the union background thing. People feel really a close relation to, the white people who are mad about, having to adjust to the economy, shipping out their jobs. But that's my personal take. So huge news for Kamala Harris. Look really, really good in the numbers right now for Kamala Harris. Huge stuff.